Hello American government people, this is Mr. Lawback. I hope you're doing well. In this video we are going to go over the reasons the United States has a two-party system. We will also go over what a multi-party system is and a one-party system is. As it is today, the two major parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, dominate American politics. This means that we have a two-party system. However, there is no mention of political parties in the Constitution. So they are technically an informal part of our government. And it is not to say that they are the only two political parties. There are other political parties, but we really only hear about the Democrats and Republicans regularly. In a typical election in the United States, only the Republican or the Democratic Party candidates have a reasonable chance of winning office. It is true in some states and many local communities, one of the two major parties may be overwhelmingly dominant, winning election after election. And it may do so for a very long period of time. The Democratic Party dominated the South for the decades after the Civil War. This is also the case currently in Philadelphia, where the Democratic Party really dominates, and there are very few Republican office holders. Several factors explain why America has had and continues to have a two-party system. It is actually a combination of factors and not just one. And what I'm going to speak about here is not just limited to those factors, but these are some of the big ones. There is a historical basis for the two-party system. It is rooted in the beginning of the nation itself. The framers of the Constitution were opposed to political parties. They referred to them as factions, and they thought they were a threat to a healthy republic. They feared that these factions or political parties would get too much power. However, shortly after the ink dried, the Anti-Federalists and the Federalists were established. The Anti-Federalists argued against ratification, and the Federalists argued in favor of ratification. George Washington reflected in his farewell address that he thought political parties could be very divisive and not a good thing, and he warned against them becoming too entrenched in power. Another reason is the force of tradition. Once established, human institutions are likely to become self-perpetuating. This goes for the two-party system as well. The very fact that the nation began with a two-party system has been a leading reason for the retention of the two-party system. To make this point, most Americans accept the idea of a two-party system simply because it has always been that way. In other words, you could quite simply say America has a two-party system because America has a two-party system. Another reason, our electoral system tends to promote the existence of the two major parties as well. Much of American election law is purposely written to discourage non-major party candidates. In fact, nearly all those persons who make state laws are either Democrat or Republican. Remember, most election laws are state-level laws. The Republican Party and the Democrats regularly act in a bipartisan way in this manner. They don't want another political party to gain power. So they craft and pass these laws that keep the Democrat and Republican parties in this powerful position and prevent a third or minor party from really gaining a whole lot of power. Without getting into too much detail, it is very difficult to even get on the election ballot if you are not a Democrat or Republican, almost everywhere in the United States. Americans are, on the whole, an ideological homogeneous group. That is, over time, the American people have shared many of the same ideals, the same basic principles, and the same patterns of beliefs. This is not to say that all Americans are alike. Clearly, that is not the case. However, the two major political parties are very good at appealing to the needs of most Americans. Both political parties tend to be moderate. Both are built on compromise and usually try to occupy the middle ground. Both parties seek the same prize, the votes of the majority of the electorate. To do so, they must win over essentially the same people, these moderates. Each party usually takes policy positions that do not differ a great deal from those of the other major party. The two major political parties try to blunt the extreme wings of their own political party. So both the Democrats and Republican Party try to go towards the moderate or the center of the political scale. So those are just some of the major reasons we have a two-party system in the United States. As I mentioned earlier, there are more reasons, but those are the really big ones. So let's talk about multi-party systems. Some countries have a multi-party system. Many European democracies tend to have this multi-party system, and they are actually more common around the world than the two-party system. So this would be 3 or more political parties. In a typical multi-party system, the various parties are each based on particular interests, for example, economic class, religious beliefs, or regional attachment. Advocates for a multi-party system say that it gives voters more of a choice instead of an either-or which exists in a two-party system. Multi-party systems do tend to produce a broader, more diverse representation of the electorate. The strength, however, is also a major weakness because it often leads to instability in the government. One party is often unable to win the support of the majority of voters. As a result, the power to govern must be shared by a number of political parties. This is called a coalition. These coalitions are typically temporary alliances of several political parties. These coalitions are formed and dissolved pretty regularly. And as a general rule, multi-party democracies tend to be less stable than two-party systems. There's also the one-party system. Many of these are dictatorships, and the one party is the party of the ruling group. For all practical purposes, many one-party systems really amount to no political party because there's no other choice. And in many cases, in one-party systems, elections are not even legitimate democratic elections. They are just for show. So I hope this video helps you better understand why we have a two-party system in the United States and what a multi-party system and a one-party system looks like.